Welcome to the Heroic Voice. I'm your host, Dennis Maloney, the publisher at Heroic Publishing. It is January 24th, 2026, and I am here today for the next half hour or so with artist Jeff Hayes, who first came to my attention with the covers that he did for two Liberty Girl prose books from Prose Press. Um, You did you do any of the other ones, Jeff, or was it just the Liberty Girls?
I did Liberty Goals and I did
The Flare
Flare
cover.
cover. Yeah.
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 Okay. Lovely pieces.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I don't have them here with me. We're in the process of moving and stuff has
Oh,
been boxed up and I'm sure that we can, dig it out and incorporate it into it in post-production.
sure,
You
sure.
wouldn't by any chance have any copies of those, would you? No, if not, don't worry about it.
Probably it would take me a second to dig in. I could
Yeah,
find them
it's
though.
okay. We will accommodate. So
Okay.
this is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators and other interesting people on a variety of subjects. I am Dennis Maloney, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we feature good girl and bad girl artwork, super babes, and all kinds of Silver Agey style stories. I would like to find out from you, Jeff, since this is our
Sure.
first actual meeting, we've never spoken before,
That's right.
what you like doing as far as
What
art.
I like doing. I like being retired and I like doing art full time. Pretty much outside of art, I'm an avid TV viewer. I love movies. I love film. I love honestly, other than that, my wife and my dog, that's a pretty simple life I'm living right now.
Sounds wonderful. Oh, my goodness. Simplicity.
Yes,
Um, Talk about your history, if you will. How did
sure.
you get into art? Clearly you love it, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it in your retirement. What first attracted you to it?
So years and years and years ago, I mean, obviously, I love comic books, and I used to love going to a local bookstore, Half Price Books here in Austin, and I would stand there and just they had a literally a wall of books, paperbacks, and these racks that you could just sit there and stare at. And I used to just stare at them and look at the artwork and look at that kind of that is what interested me in the type of work I do now. But like a lot of guys, I've always loved comic books, and I used to make comic books, and I used to make fan magazines when I was like 12, 13 years old. My best friend and I used to make little Star Trek fan magazines, and I'm always, I have gone through God knows how many multiple sets of Crayolas in my life. I don't know how many coloring books that I colored outside the lines on purpose. But I've always been interested in art. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandmother was always buying me coloring books, colors, and she knew that that's what I enjoyed doing. But as I got older, as I got into my teens, is when I used to go to that bookstore all the time, and I'd buy, 10-cent comics and things like that that they had in a bin, and sometimes I'd just honestly buy them on whatever the cover was, and I take them home, and I'm going to confess, I didn't sit there and just like read the comic. I looked at the all the art. That's what I was looking at all the time. And then, of course, I started reading them, started getting interested in Captain America and Falcon, Thor, Iron Man, Marvel comics. Um, but when I started really doing something with the art that was not that was more, as we said back in 1980, early 80s, was commercial. I ended up playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games, and started working for a local Austin company called it was called Metagaming, and they made little pocket games, real simple things that one was called Melee Wizard. The Fantasy Trip was kind of their overall product, and I found out that where they were located, they were not many miles away from my home. So it made it quite convenient just to kind of walk in one day like an idiot. I felt so dumb because I didn't know what to say, what to ask, but I just said, do you guys need somebody to do artwork or help with the little magazine they had called Interplay? It was a little black and white magazine. And they said, uh, I was the owner's wife that I was talking to, and she says, well, let me introduce you to my husband, and she did, and he said, yeah, look, here's what I need you to do: go home and do 5 black and white ink drawings for me. And I said, okay, I can do that. So went home, did that, knocked out, I think a lizard man, a swordsman, just kind of, I think a wizard, something like that, and I took those back probably a day later, and he said, "Yeah, yeah, these are good. We could use these. We could use these." He said, "What else are you interested in?" And I said, "Well, I like Starlog magazine. I've always loved Starlog, and I love the idea of looking at behind the scenes at things and the extras that you would get." And he says, "Well, we have a little." Kind of players magazine that we put out once a month, or I think it was once a quarter or something like that at the time. And he says, would you be interested in looking at putting that together? And I was like, okay, sure. I'd be interested in it. And so he took me back in this room. It was probably, oh, 20 by 20. And in the middle was a, was a large photostat machine, and then nice desks and work, everything you could want to do artwork and design and layout. So I started doing that, and I would do it. It worked full time for a company called HEB, our grocery company here in Texas, and then I was working part time with them. Now, I got rich doing that, as you can possibly imagine. I was literally paid like I think it was $20 for doing the layout on the magazine work, and then I got paid $1 per square inch of artwork. And the funny thing was, that's $1 of where it ends up printed. So
Uh-huh.
if like I did let's say an 8.5 by 11 a piece of work, and it gets put in there and it's reduced down to like just 1 inch little filler piece, I'd get $1. And so, but you know what? I didn't care because my work was being published, and he gave me a lot of encouragement. And he would give me a lot of leeway, and like if there was a filler piece at the bottom of an article, if I felt comfortable doing the artwork to kind of bolster that little filler piece in there, and maybe it was 4 inches by 4 inches or 4 by 6, I'd knock something out and he would approve it and it'd get in there. And so that was kind of my first published work. Sadly, metagaming was right unbeknownst to me, really. There was creatives in the organization were dissatisfied with the way the organization was being run, because the owner, by the way, was an extremely intelligent man, did decoding of Russian, I guess it was a listening station information
Uh,
during the 50s and 60s. And so he got into computers and was a programmer, and that was where his heart lied. He liked games, of course, because it kind of fit with some of the puzzle solving that he liked to do. But he I don't know that he was, I don't know to say that he was running the business good or bad, but there were other creatives in the organization who felt that he wasn't uh, pushing their line.
yeah.
The game creators,
Just a heads up, Jeff,
yeah,
your
yeah.
picture is frozen on my end.
Oh, good God, of course. Let's try to fix that. Oh, can you still hear the audio?
The audio is coming through fine.
Let's see. Let me turn that back on.
There we
There we
go.
go.
You're back.
I just, yeah, I think it's the Zoom upgrade. So, I apologize. And so the some of the folks split off, created their own gaming company, Steve Jackson Games, and I guess at that time, metagaming was they just kind of came to a natural end, so they shut down, and I kind of pulled the same stunt. I went over to Steve Jackson Games, walked in the office one day, and said, "Hey, I've used to do this, used to do that," and the guy goes, "Yeah, I think I remember you." And so I got to do some artwork for some of their games. Uh, Ended up doing that for a handful of years, maybe 3, 4 years, and was working full time for the grocery company. And I had a great boss there that recognized the creative side of me, and ended up getting me a job of a commercial artist. And so what I
Oh,
would do is just advertisement art. I don't know how many steaks I've drawn and painted. I don't know how many cans of beans I've drawn and painted, but I did that for a long, long time. Then in about 89, I made a drastic career change. It was quite a departure. I became a police officer.
aha.
And I did that for 30 years. I started as a reserve and ended up as an assistant chief. And so all that time though, artwork was still something that I was continually doing. I've done work for independent filmmakers. I've done work for up until like 2013, I was helping kind of indie film and indie web. That was kind of the new thing, web productions, and I was helping them. But I wanted, I guess I wanted to translate that doing posters kind of feel into printed materials. Um, I love ephemera. I love the printed book. I love a comic book. I like holding them. I like smelling them when they're new. There's just something about that that the digital world does not replicate. It's just I like that physical feel. So I wanted to get into something that uh, could use my talents and that I could get something in print again. If that not a newspaper ad or not a little pictures of food products or whatever, but something fun, something in the genre of that I was interested in, science fiction, fantasy, horror, all those 70s kids kind of stuff. And so I got online and I was 100% sure that there would be, uh, with all the indie filmmaking that was going on, I said, oh, look, here's a Star Trek fan film. Here's a Star Wars fan film. And so I made contact with them and I was able to help here and there, G.I. Joe fan film and things like that. And then one day it just dawned on me, I wanted to do book covers. And it's something that back to that half price bookstore, looking up on that wall of books. And I just reached out to, I think, three pulp centric kind of publishers because that interests me. I like pulp heroes and comic heroes, obviously. And the only reply I got was from Prose Press.
From Tommy Handful.
And yes, from Tommy. And so I think we did, again, he wanted to see some of my work. Luckily, I attended a few classes at it's called Gemini School of Visual Arts. It was based just out of north of Austin. And I had some pieces there that I could share with him. And he liked them. And so uh, he he said, "Have you done, if you go a couple of weeks later, he kind of said, have you ever done superhero stuff?" And I said, "Well, not professionally, but but I'm interested, obviously, and that's how I got my very first cover, which happens to be Liberty Girl.
Hmm.
And so I worked for Prose Press for man years, doing too much work, to be honest with you. It probably murdered my creativity sometimes because I was just pumping out things on weekends. But um, so I again, obviously, being a police officer and being a police administrator, I had more time than your average officer. But I was constantly getting my weekends, which should have been dedicated to my wife and the dog and the family, I'm sitting at the computer doing artwork. And and so I had to pull back a little bit from Prose Press because I think Tommy would have given me anything I wanted, anything I asked for, any title. And at that time, I was dumb enough to just keep going, feed me, feed me. And so it started to hurt a little bit, and then he got a really fantastic title. Um, Boy, it just jumped out of my head as soon as I was going to say it. It was a Western series, the Gunsmith series, and that was going to be a big title for them, and it was so it became very important for me to focus. I wanted to focus on that series. But after a few years, I decided that I needed to go back to school. I needed to go to school. I've never had formal art training. I've never, I mean, I started working at 17, no, 16, and have been working since. Uh, didn't have a lot of money as a kid, so it wasn't like college was like right there on my horizon. But uh, after doing law enforcement for that amount of time and having that extra time to do it, um, I talked to my wife. I said, "Hey, I'm coming up on my 30 years. I think it's time to pull the plug and I need to do something that I really will love, which I want to do art. I want to do it full time." So my mentor at the school said, "Hey, you come over. We'll get you into the 4-year program, and then you have something under your belt, and you can go out there and freelance." And so, of course, I retire in 2019, go to school late 2019, and then COVID hits.
Uh-huh.
And so they shut the school down. And the uh, during so I had to leave because they basically ended classes. They tried remote, and it didn't just obviously didn't work in art school. And I just kept doing and increased that volume of book covers and kept in contact with a lot of the guys that I worked with at Prose Press. And then I just threw out some lures and had some titles that I enjoyed. And I told these authors, I said, look, I'd like to, propose that I work on some of your covers. I will charge you less than my freelance rate. Just to get into this, to get into this series, your hero or your series you've got going, may have made some really good friends doing that. So that's a lot of words to tell you that I've been doing art a long time and been
I
loving it.
enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Oh, great.
Where can I assume that you have some sort of social media presence? Where can people see what
Yes.
you're up to these days?
So I have obviously Facebook and Instagram, and both of those can be searched through my company name, which is Plasma Fire Graphics.
Okay.
And then I have a web page, which is a much more simple and direct gallery access, which is www.plasmafiregraphics.com. And they can go there, they can see pretty much the stuff I've done. I try to rotate it out a lot, but the stuff I've worked on over the last, say, oh, 5, 6 years, trying to keep it fresh and everything.
What
But that's where they
projects are
can
you
see
working
most
on
of the
right
work.
now?
I just today because we've got what we call the Texas frozen winter down here. We're at 29 degrees right now,
Uh-huh.
and
Arctic
that
blast.
brings everything to a standstill here. So,
Yeah.
but I was able to sit down and work today, and I finished up a fantasy a novel cover for a Glenn E. Smith. He's an author. I say I finished. I've come close to it. I've got to present it to him, get his approval, and then I've got a lot of little details to knock out. Just finished up a sci-fi cover for Charles F. Millhouse. It's a trilogy called the Serena Darkwood Adventures, but this was his newest, and I think that's coming out here within the next month or two. But I'm always juggling three or four projects at a time, and so I finish one, I move it over, kind of in a holding pattern, and then I start on something new. And I've got I just finished a Sherlock Holmes cover. I'm trying to think here. Got a new client. He's an art director for his own publishing company. Another science fiction cover. Man, I've got so many lined up. It's hard to sit here and remember them, but
Yeah.
uh, it's that and of course Barry Reese. I just finished a couple of covers for him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got his own little. He's going into his own publishing his own books and titles, and so I hope to do some more work with him.
Was talking to Richard
Um,
White the other day, who also
mhm,
contributed to Liberty Go Books. He's contemplating the idea of doing a Vanguard of Freedom um, anthology in prose. Maybe
okay,
you might be interested in doing something with Richard.
sure. Send him my email address.
I'll do
I
that.
would absolutely love to open talks with him and see what he thinks, what he feels.
Let's
I
talk
hope
about
my style
let's
still.
talk about comic books a little bit. You alluded to the
Sure.
fact that you love comics, but do you have favorite heroes, favorite characters?
So, the first comics I ever started reading were the old Dell and Gold Key.
Hmm.
And matter of fact, I still love that artwork. There's something romantic in my brain about that artwork and that style and that vibrant color and that. I guess it's going to sound kind of with the Marvel movies out and everything like that. I like the main heroes. I enjoy the main heroes, but I like kind of I've always liked the secondary characters. Like I used to love Iron Man before anyone cared about Iron Man. And I love drawing Iron Man. And I love like Black Panther. I love Falcon. I used to love the old Kung Fu 70s Kung Fu series, Iron Fist and uh, all of those types of kind of second tier characters.
Why do you think
Uh,
that is?
I don't know. I guess because I found them to be uh, originally, I probably liked the fact that there is a black hero. Like with the Falcon and Black Panther, you got to kind of put it in its time period of the 70s. Uh, I used to love. I don't know why. This is almost impossible to answer because I did like Captain America, that 70s kind of run. I was interested in X-Men with when it was Byrne and Claremont and Austin, doing the inks and everything. Those are my go-to kind of comic series. But I've always liked kind of
Well, from a creative
no, go ahead.
standpoint, I'm just going to throw this
Mhm.
out there at you.
Sure,
The major characters, you're kind of locked in creatively. With the
sure.
secondary characters, you have a little more creative freedom because they're not as important to the companies. Um, might be part of it. Um, it could be that you were seeing more creativity with the secondary characters than you were
That's
with the
possible.
majors. Yeah, I don't know. because I'm not you. I just,
You know,
oh,
like I was talking about Iron Man. Iron Man was um, as I understand, kind of from Marvel, was a mid-range a title. It got interest as the 70s went on, but I was interested in the idea of it. And so obviously the first time I ever heard Marvel was going to do an Iron Man movie, my brain exploded. I was like, oh my gosh. And then of course it was a great movie. But I still gravitate toward here's an example. And you're probably right because I love like Doctor Strange, but Doctor Strange is established. And so um, uh, Night Vale is a good example of I like Night Vale. She's a character that if you ever have a Night Vale cover, I would love to do something like that. I just did about 2 years now, 2 years ago now, I did a Night Vale pseudo comic cover just to play around with the character. But I don't know, it's possible. I think maybe it's that freedom, the freedom to be creative. I think that you may have hit something there because uh, it's even, as I understand, it's even hard for the mainstream artists and writers to mess with a character too much,
yep.
you know, uh, and changing a costume or changing a power or, God forbid, change a backstory or something. But
But they do that all the time.
they do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess because I kind of not lost interest. I got more into the gaming aspect of artwork and stuff during that 80s period. And then the 90s, I confess, I hardly bought a comic book.
Mhm.
I might have picked up Sandman as a series or something like that, or picked something up because of the particular artist. But I mean, I cannot tell you the number of comics that I've had and now that I've given away or sold. My son has inherited like every Star Wars comic I ever collected. But I still grab them every once in a while, especially if that cover grabs my eye. I'll pick them up. I'm going back and getting on eBay and I'm trying to find some of those old 70s Premiere and Marvel full-size black and white mags and uh, from so many different titles, but just trying to pick up ones that I remember and that I didn't have again, and so it's fun reading them, especially
Dracula Lives, Tales of the Zombie, yeah, Savage
you're on
Sword of
it.
Conan.
Those absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now they're a bit more expensive than when I used to see them in the local 7-Eleven,
50
but
cents.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember the we were talking one of the authors and I were talking on offline. This would have been two couple 3 4 weeks back, and we were talking about the giant size Superman and Spider-Man that came out mid 70s. And I go, oh man, I forgot about that. I love that book. Let me go see if I can find somebody on eBay that has one for sale and it's in good condition. And I started laughing. I said, oh my gosh, if I'd only hung on to that thing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
If
I absolutely loved comic collecting, and I get made fun of because I'll take little pictures of stuff that I've gotten off eBay and I'll throw them up on Facebook just on my business site and say, "Oh, this is what I'm reading now. This is what I got the other day." And but I always I would often tell them I'm not collecting comics anymore. I'm not collecting any comics anymore. And one of the authors gets on there and he says, he goes, I like those, but you're not collecting comics anymore. So now I get heat for that. But
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for spending time with us. Hang on after this. I want to talk to you about a couple of things after
sure,
we're done recording.
absolutely.
Let me take a moment to encourage people who have watched this video to hit that like button, subscribe, and most importantly, share and comment. The only way we're going to get feedback is if you comment on this. The only way we're going to get new people to come on board is if you share it. with people that you know. If you can do that, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you again, Jeff.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to working with you on something in the future.
That'd be awesome.